As far as I'm concerned, I've never not been in identity. When I became a bulletin board systems operator, my job was, do people have accounts? Do the right people access the right things? Do the right groups exist? Ultimately, the whole purpose of having an admin is to control access to the system. Every single system, it's all been identity. It's all about who can do what and how do you control it.
Hey everyone, on this episode of the Identity Heroes, we have a chance to interview Heather Flanagan. You probably know the name from IDPro, but did you also know she has a background in library science and medieval studies? Well, actually, it's a very natural path into identity when you hear her story. We also hear about how you take very complex messages and smush it down into a very easy to understand spherical cow, if you will. And last but not least, the contributions those non-developers in the audience have on the identity industry and how non-coders can actually have a real profound impact on the direction of things to come. Let's have a listen to what Heather has to say. Welcome to this episode of the Identity Heroes. Today, I'm joined by Heather Flanagan, who a lot of folks know you and know of you through IDPro. So I'm so excited to have you join me today, Heather.
And thank you for inviting me. This is going to be fun.
You get to always ask questions of others, and now I get to ask questions of you. And so this is, hopefully you enjoy the tables being turned in a fun way and just to share your background with everybody.
Happy to do it.
Well, awesome. Well, I know you had kind of a busy day, so we'll just sort of jump right into it. The structure of these sessions, which we typically do, we try to create like this origin story. And that origin story centers around the heroes themselves. So we have this like hero's arc. And I have a hunch that this will resonate well with you as we think about some of your background. But nevertheless, the challenges, the obstacles, the gauntlets that you've gone through to get where you are. And so kind of wanted to just play out some of that hero's journey with you, if that's all right.
Of course.
Awesome. Well, you and I had talked on IDPro. I'm sure we've crossed paths all the time at Identiverse and other industry events. You had started off our conversation mentioning something about a background in medieval studies. And as I look at your LinkedIn, I saw that you have a degree in history, and then you also had your master's in library science. And medieval studies is, I'm guessing, the bachelor's portion of that.
I really was supposed to be a librarian when I grew up. I was set, man. I was bound and determined I was going to get my library science degree. I knew from like age 15 on, that's what I wanted. I wanted that degree. I was focused.
Dewey Decimal tattoo anywhere or anything like this? That just
no, but I do have a lovely tattoo with a book on my arm, which is actually hard to say.
Okay, yes, committed, yes. Librarian for life. Well, and that was, okay, so this, without a doubt, you're our first destined to be a librarian on the show that we've had. And here we are in identity together.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be okay if I sort of started off like your journey? And the way I was going to do that is I just stole some of your positions and titles that you've held since you graduated and just sort of play them back and we can get a feel for the journey?
Sure.
Is that all right?
Go for it.
Okay, so in loose chronological order and loose couplings.
Did you just call me a loose woman? Wait a minute.
Oh my gosh, I'm not going there. Now you're going to make me blush and I'm going to be so many shades of red. I am keeping composure because I'm a professional moderator and I am so good at this that I'm not blushing right now like I am. Nevertheless, you started off as, actually, okay, this is the most interesting transition, I think, of all your career entries is the fact that you went from library science right into the sysadmin and analyst role, especially in the academic side. I think it was Stanford and Duke both, and then went on to do program management and facilitation. Now, facilitator runs through your life. It feels like that's just a common theme that you are as this facilitator. But there's also sprinklings of technical editor positions that you held. Program coordinator, you were the RFC series editor. So there's a lot of things I'm hearing about the standards involvement and working groups. Dipping toes back in technical writer role, chief of staff. An editor and facilitator. There's the facilitator once again. The place that we probably all know you from is being the executive director and principal editor of IDPro. And thank you for that, by the way. And last but not least, you're also the principal and consultant. You're the sole proprietor of Spherical Cow Consulting. And that's not a librarian. I don't see a librarian in there.
Okay.
Where did
let me explain unto you the path, and it will all make sense because it's actually been all fairly linear up until about 15 years ago. So there I was. I graduated with my library science degree because I was bound and determined to have it, right? And oddly enough, Once I got it, I never worked in a library ever again. What I did do, no, well, if you think about it, right? When you get your graduating class of librarians, they are, as are most college students, poor. And they're not going into a lucrative field, which means finding jobs is actually very, very hard because they can't just go move to the job, and the job can't afford to move them to it because there's no money in being a librarian. There we go. But
And I
I
have a hunch that
found,
all the librarians we knew growing up probably had that position almost tenured, and for decades they don't
right.
leave the role.
But that was okay because what I found was the public research division of a privately owned newspaper called the Raleigh News and Observer, also known as the News and Disturber, but that was like an inside joke at the time. And I'm like, well, public research, that's like being a reference librarian. Surely I can do that. So I did that. It was incredibly boring. And a lot of what I did was roll posters and type labels. Not exactly what I wanted to do with my degree, but it was a privately owned newspaper, and it was the mid-90s. Some of you will remember the mid-90s. That's called the dot-com era. And sure enough, the newspaper was going to spin up this new thing called an ISP with modems, and oh, wasn't it cool? And there was nobody trained in any of this stuff, right? Your computer science graduates were not practical in terms of, okay, do you actually know how to manage a server? Do you actually know how to do these things? It was usually much more theoretical at the time. So they were just looking for reasonably smart people. And they come to me and said, hey, we've got this bulletin board system. Could you run it? And I said, does it come with a book? Because I know what to do with books. And so they give me the book, Galacticom Bulletin Board Manual. Is about this big, right? Cool. And that went fine. And they said, you know what, just come work for us. You don't need to be in the public research division anymore. Come work for the ISP. So I did. And I became a bulletin board systems operator. That lasted for 3 whole months, at which point they said, so we've got this system. It's called DNS. Could you just take that on? And I'm like, does it come with a book? To which they said, sure. And they give me the O'Reilly Cricket book. And I'm like, all right. And so I teach myself bind, and I figure out, how to manage the DNS system for an ISP. That was by February. In March, they come to me and said, so we've got this thing called SendMail. And I just said, just give me the book.
I want to see your bookshelf, by the way. I think it's like all these O'Reilly Cricket books. You have everything ever published.
I had a lot of Cricket books. Okay. I had all of the O'Reilly books, all of it. Several versions of the SendMail book.
I can see all the artwork on the cover too.
They're very pretty.
Yes.
They're very pretty. And so I became a SendMail. At this point, I'm now a Unix sysadmin, and I've never gotten out of tech since then. From there, I went to work for the largest privately owned software company in the world, SAS Institute, as a system administrator. Now, SAS was interesting. It's based in North Carolina, around Research Triangle Park. And it was kind of a cult because seriously, they had like a 1% turnover rate for their staff, because they had on-site healthcare and on-site daycare and on-site gyms and on-site golf and
like
on-site cafeteria.
Google.
It was Google before Google. And so no one ever left, which also meant that in order to actually advance your career, really slow. At which point I went to go work for anactual.com in digital rights management. From there, I went into research and education. That's where I started working at Duke University, where I was actually hired as a sysadmin. And within 6 months, this didn't involve a book. This involved a legal pad, because I talked to my new boss, and my new boss said, all right, we're gonna redo this job description. And we took the legal pad, drew a line down the middle, and one column said fun, and one column said not fun. And we figured out all the things that I found fun were all the things that he found not fun. And so we made the job description, and I became senior manager of the systems group for Central IT at Duke University with the fun column.
Way to create your own job role right there.
It was fantastic. So I worked there for about 5 years. And then a position opened up that was almost exactly the same, except one level up, a director of systems, but almost like exactly the same systems. And that was at Stanford University. So then I went out. I said, well, why not? Pick up me, my sweetheart, cats, poof, off we go to the West Coast. And worked there for about 3 years, at which point I got laid off, which was awesome. It was so cool. They paid me to go. I had the best summer ever. I learned so much about textiles that summer. I knit, I weave, I make my own yarn, I dye my own yarn, all these things, right? And
There's an identity fabric joke here, but it's failing me at the moment. So I'm just thinking of like half the looms and all these things.
all
Sorry.
the
Yes.
things, all the
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Okay.
The thing is the day I got my notice of being laid off, I mean, Stanford was very, very kind. I was supposed to go to a conference that weekend. And they said, go ahead. We've already paid for all of it. Whatever. We don't care. So I go. And there's a thing about research and education that you miss in almost the entirety of industry. And that is just how deeply the collaborations happen from one institution to the next, to the next, to the next. That's where so much software has been developed. So many ideas like SAML federations and whatnot, they happen through the collaborations of all these institutions that come together who aren't resourced enough to do the job on their own. Probably can't even afford to buy the product, but together they can build it. And so I was now part of this group that was working on what we call middleware for just research and education around the world. And I'd been doing that for a couple of years as part of my role at Stanford. And now I've gotten laid off. And I stand up in front of the group and I say, hello, 65 of my closest friends. My name is Heather Flanagan, recently at Stanford University, but I just got laid off. And everybody gasped. It's like the oxygen levels just went boing. And by the end of that, now at this point, because they all knew me. We'd been working together for years, collaborating. And they started coming up to me going, okay, because this is now 2010. Like, all right, I don't have a job for you. We're in a recession. This is really hard. But I have a piece of work. I have a grant. I have a contract. I have a thing. Would that help? And I'm like, sure, it sounds like fun. And that's literally how I became a one-person consultancy, because I just started accruing pieces of work. And over time, it started with being very much more of a contractor, where it was very tasks-driven, edit these documents, manage these projects, write these reports. It was very, very scoped. But over time, that changed because I still had all my experience of how do you actually manage people? How do you think strategically about the mission of an entire university, something like that.
Well, and it
So,
seems like the grant work too would also bring in some of the academic background that you had of navigating that world as well. Like now you're the recipient of the grant as opposed to one managing or on that other side, but just having that expertise and familiarity with it probably makes it easier to work with. Okay.
Exactly. And so then I started being brought into more executive level roles, more sort of like general project, where they would ask me to work on retainer because there was no specific tasks. It was just make it work, make it happen, help these things. And where I am today is almost exclusively with people that want me to help them think about the standards process, or to facilitate the standards process, or to help coordinate large groups of people in technology so that they can come together and actually accomplish really cool things. That is what I do.
I mean, it seems like that cross-institution, again, back to the academic background, actually starts playing out then in this world, because you think about client side, everyone, especially in that era, it was, oh my gosh, this is IP. I can't share it with anybody in the world. I'm not going to tell anybody, especially not someone across the aisle. And now it's like, this just seems like, once again, you wrote your own job description. You were meant to be in standards facilitator and a working group facilitator. Is there a tattoo for that?
Well, all of my tattoos have knives, so maybe. Sharp and pointy.
So in a way, I would say yours is actually somewhat linear, despite thinking the librarian path. This all jives. This makes sense. Like this is to where you are right now.
Right. It is working with people. It's explaining things to people. It's helping organize the data that they're going to use. I'm not an architect. I'm not a coder. I'm not any of those traditional technical jobs. But as it turns out, those traditional technical jobs desperately need people like me, people with the librarian background. Sometimes a communicator. Sometimes they ask me about, I don't know, some of the AI things that I've written. And I said, no, that's not how my brain works. I write it down because what will happen is I will remember that I have written it and I know exactly where to find it. I don't know what it says. even though I wrote it, but I know where to go get it. I live on indexes in my head
No,
of
this
where
is,
all the information is.
it almost feels like one of the memory books that I was reading once about like building the house and the rooms and the things and knowing exactly where it is in the room to go find the thing and forgetting the process. But I wish I had that retrieval process because I lack it. I am impressed. Well, here we have Spherical Cow, and I understand that there is. So I have to ask Spherical Cow, the origin, just because your consultancy. Tell us about.
Spherical Cow is a reference to a very old joke about physicists, theoretical physicists, in fact. If you want the whole joke, I'm not gonna, taunt you with it here. It actually has its own Wikipedia entry because it's that old a joke. I am not a physicist, nor can I necessarily play one on TV, but what you're referring to is taking a incredibly complicated problem and squishing it down into something simple enough that you can work with. You can't necessarily work with the ocean, but if you scoop up the ocean and put it in a bottle, you can at least start with a mock-up of, okay, it kind of starts this way. In my system administration groups, we did that a lot. We talked about spherical cows all the time as we were trying to take the complexities of all the systems, the identities in the systems, the access in the systems, the user requirements for the systems, and squish them into something simple enough that we could actually make project plans, that we could explain it to management, that we could explain it to users. And so it almost became a term of art in systems as well as in physicists. But then, as I became an independent, one of my first almost clients was the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory people, more commonly known as LIGO, the black hole collision finders.
Hawaii, or where are they headquartered?
There's actually several detectors around the world.
I'm just thinking of all the detector network and all the, I'm totally nerding out
It looks
right
like
now.
a great big L is what it looks like.
Okay.
There's one in Louisiana, there's one in Hanford, Washington, and they've got some agreements with some of the other ones around the world. But at that point, I actually needed a proper business, right, with business insurance and business checking accounts and all these things. And so I did that. And then I wanted to figure out what to name it. And I'm like, well, I'm working with all these people to make all of these complicated problems something simple enough we could work with. And there's these physicists over here. They're going to get this joke. And so I named it Spherical Cow Consulting. They made me an honorary physicist on the spot because they thought that was the best name ever.
I am thinking I have a robbed childhood because I am the son of a physicist, a Bell Labs physicist, no less, and I have never heard the spherical cow joke. So it is one that I am going to be Googling later and learning all about. So love again, here we are with origin stories already, right? In the hero's journey. So, as we are thinking through that, so we figured out the path, we figured out your arc to where you are today. We're all kind of the benefit or beneficiaries, I should say, of your spherical cow approach in the way that you moderate IDPro topics and the body of knowledge and like the conversations that take place there and things along those lines as you're thinking through areas that maybe had just really a pivotal moment for you in life that you in your career to get you into this identity path as opposed to some of the more generalized networking and security topics. What took you specifically, do you think, into the identity world as you were doing? Was there any moment?
People have asked me that question, and I always find it a little bit puzzling. Because as far as I'm concerned, I've never not been in identity. When I became a bulletin board systems operator, what was my job? My job was, do people have accounts? Do the right people access the right things? Do the right groups exist? And there was the additional making sure things was patched. But ultimately, the whole purpose of having an admin is to control access to the system. Every single system I've ever worked on, it's all been identity. It's all about who can do what and how do you control it.
Absolutely makes sense. Well, then it's always been identity as you've followed this arc and always been along there. Well, okay. Speaking of always been identity, here we are, 2025. We're actually almost done with 2025. It's September.
Yeah, how did that happen?
I have no idea. This is wild. But nevertheless, okay, this is a horrible interviewer thing to say, but I'm almost going to presume I know your answer to this question without asking you this question. But I'm going to ask this question. 2025, what trend didn't we see coming in 2024 that was going to have such a profound impact on where we are today in identity and access management?
I'm going to have to poke at you a little bit because I want to answer your question with a question.
I would say the audience that we are speaking to today. So the recipients, sorry, if as we're thinking through the folks who are going to listen to this and looking up to you and saying, I wanted to know her background and
Sure,
all of that.
sure.
So I'll give you that as the we. That's not specific. It's just the people watching us.
Because I'm
Fourth screen,
some people will find the impact of AI being the transformative thing.
which,
And
not said it's a magic trick. I just
it
wrote it down here
right.
too to prove that I had a
Sure.
hunch that's where we were going. Right.
And yet there's people who've been thinking about this for years. They've seen this coming. They've known that this is going to be a problem. So is it new for a bunch of people? Sure, because they didn't know what to pay attention to. Stepping back a little bit to, okay, separating out AI and agentic AI and Gen AI from the rest of, from the workloads and the APIs and things like that that otherwise make up non-human identity. Non-human identity was like hot last year. And yet you can talk to people who've actually been focusing on that for the last 2 decades. It's just when it pops up in sort of the popular consciousness, I guess I would say, as a really big thing. Another thing that has come up a lot more and yet has been a problem since before computers, and that's delegation. How to delegate properly, how to do it beyond one step. That's an incredibly hard problem that's been exacerbated by AI in particular, but also by all the digital transformation work that's going underway as more and more things are put online, your healthcare records, your financial records, all of this stuff. You suddenly have a much broader problem of, okay, well, what happens when you die to all of your stuff? Who gets access to it? How do you delegate that? You know, unanswered problems that are really spinning up some interesting, compelling work.
Absolutely. I mean, I was going to get nerdy even and just be like the delegation in medieval times is like the wax seal and the signet ring. As you're thinking about how do we give proof of ownership and proof of, as on behalf of, as the courier is carrying a letter from one kingdom to yet another, and just. But you're absolutely right. Sorry, just thinking through how old the problems actually are. It's just that the worldview framing and the vernacular that we use now to describe the situation, it's actually not that new by any stretch.
It is more urgent. That's for sure. The rate of technological change is no joke. That said, it is fast now, but I would also point to remember back to when cloud was new. And suddenly cloud was taking over and it became a transformational thing where you could suddenly get all of these efficiencies just by using someone else's computer. Um, but then all of the interesting problems that raised when you were using someone else's computer, perhaps even a shared computer, and how did that resourcing happen, and how did you manage the identity for it, and did you have to have multiple sources of truth to get to all of the cloud infrastructure, and could cloud infrastructure talk to each other? AI is the same thing. It's just faster.
I have a funny analogy here that is going to somehow tie back to something you just wrote about, and you're going to go, I have no idea where you're going. When I met my wife, I was one of the people who would brush my teeth and leave the water running the entire duration of my, 30-second brushing teeth experience. And she is of one that said, you turn off the water between the start of the brush and the end of the brush. And it just hadn't been in my motion. And thinking about the water waste, which she brought to my attention in that moment, I was reading your post about the energy waste that we are faced with and some of the side consequences that aren't being considered around the AI usage right now. It's really a fascinating take on you think about the sustainability angle of what we're being faced with, and looking at the data centers that Elon and Meta are looking to build. It has environmental impact, like actual environmental impact. It's fascinating.
I mean, living has environmental impact. You just have, you get to make choices as to what impact do you want to have. If you don't want to use plastic, which I think is a very healthy life choice, okay, then you're actually then supporting mining, because they're going to be mining for metal. They're going to be mining and shipping sand for glass. which has its own environmental impact, right? Everything has an impact that we do. It frustrates me that we don't necessarily give that the attention it deserves, so that you can say, yes, I am better with mining than I am with microplastics. People don't phrase it that way. They don't think about it that way. They think about, yeah, but that's more expensive, or this is such a more convenient form factor, or it's just one bottle. Who cares?
It matters. Like for me that there was that moment where my wife was like, turn off the water while you're brushing your teeth, like it's 30 seconds, it's the same, it's barely any part of it. And then 30 seconds twice a day, 49 years, it adds up. And not turning off an agent as you think about the processing power that it takes for that one task. And as it runs rampant, there is impact. And it's
Mm-hmm.
who cares at scale, especially the scale that I think we're all see coming. It matters.
Mm-hmm.
It truly matters.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Well, I think you did an excellent job of taking something that, we didn't necessarily see coming, but it was always kind of there and framing it in the proper context. And I appreciate the different view of that for sure.
I do like writing. Writing is a good outlet for me to think problems through. So I will probably always be a blogger, just because it helps me personally, and then other people seem to get something out of it, which is always nice.
Absolutely demonstrate skill for it. You do a great job of that. And so you've got an audience, you've got people who read your blog, you have the audience of membership, the IDPro group. As we think about approaching identity as a team, that facilitator angle that you've had, just thinking through it, how many different bodies and working groups are you involved with right now? Just out of curiosity, like standards, identity, organization. I don't even want to limit it to identity because I feel like you have your hand in a lot of pots right now.
It's kind of funny. So IDPro has been wonderful, and I've really enjoyed spinning up the body of knowledge and whatnot, but IDPro is not a standards organization, and it's actually probably the smallest bit of what I do. um, let's see. I'm a group chair in the W3C on federated identity, as well as something that may or may not touch identity. It depends on what people brings to us, and that's it's something called the Explorations Interest Group, where people are like, we don't know where to take this, give us advice. And so they bring it to this interest group. And so sometimes it's identity, sometimes it's web mapping, sometimes it's AI, who knows? It's whatever people want to bring that they don't know where to put it. There's that. I am the working group chair for the Secure Patterns for Internet Credentials in the IETF. I will occasionally author or co-author papers with the OpenID Foundation. We've got one now underway for Death in the Digital Estate. I'm now the advisor for an organization called the Syros Foundation, which is very much in the digital wallet space. And that's touching on some of the EU efforts underway. So that's been a big thing as well, that touches on standards, if you want to focus just on those.
Well, and so obviously this is, again, positions that are tailor-made for your background and I think your areas of expertise. Is there anything for the audience that will be watching this right now as they I'm going to frame it a bit narrower for you, just so when you're asking who the we is, somebody who's just starting out in the identity space, and especially right now as with some of the changes we're seeing potentially with AI and such. Is there a particular working group or other that a more novice or someone early in their career might be more involved with or be able to join just to further their professional and personal understanding of identity on a whole?
Okay.
Aside from joining IDPro, everyone should join IDPro.
And if they can't afford to join IDPro, they should read the articles in the body of knowledge, because those are all freely available. So,
and what's the URL for that, just so that everyone has that?
idpro.org/body-of-knowledge.
Awesome. We'll put that on the Chiron, make sure everyone has that as well. Okay.
Yep.
So, go ahead.
If you want to actually get involved in standards, I've got a couple blog posts that talk about some of the different standards efforts underway. I wrote one recently about the different work in AI for some of the open open standards organizations. For that matter, I've actually written about what is an open standards organization. What does that even mean to be able to join such a thing? Joining a group from scratch can be really intimidating, and it's not how you learn about identity. Really, that's because it's like diving into the deep end, and
you don't have something to contribute, perhaps, and you're just like, why? What am I doing here? I'm
that
just around the
actually,
clock.
so not quite. You're actually not quite
Okay.
right on that one, because
Okay.
if you think, I think you've fallen into the same trap that a lot of the beginners do fall into, which is I don't have anything to contribute because I don't understand selective disclosure for CBOR web tokens. It's like, okay, I understood each one of those words, but string them together and I have no idea what you just said. Which, sure, but if you like read a document that explains that a little bit and you're like, okay, I still don't quite get it, but it sounds interesting. Working groups need so many different kinds of people and so many different kinds of skills. If everybody is the same in terms of, I can write a spec. It's like, great. Could you implement it? Can you implement that spec? Because we desperately need people who can actually test out, if you read this, could you do something with it? That's a really fantastic way to contribute. Alternatively, if you're more product manager and you would never be writing code anyway, every time there's a working group meeting, I'm usually waiting for 5 minutes until someone will take notes. In a lot of the standards group, they don't like the AI to take notes because some of these conversations can be sensitive and it's hard to tell it, pick up the pen, don't write, be a little bit more thoughtful in how you do it. Right. So having people to actually type the notes up is incredibly helpful. And I desperately need it every single week for someone to do that. So yeah, implementers, people who are willing to facilitate the conversations. I can't implement a darn thing myself because this stuff doesn't come with books yet.
O'Reilly's working on it, though. Don't worry. Yeah.
I don't have to, because I have a completely different skill that's still necessary that I can bring to the table. I can facilitate a group. I know how to actually bring a group to consensus without having any particular thought on the technology itself. So all different kinds of people are needed.
Okay, this is building on that and not asking you to summarize everything you know into just a couple of minute response, but thinking about building consensus. As a lot of us are on vendor side, private sector organizations trying to communicate the value of identity up throughout the organization, you obviously rightfully re-challenged me in positioning what is identity. How do you have any words of wisdom on how to better communicate the value of identity internally for people who are in an organization feeling that they're just pigeonholed into one little place? Like, there's strategic value here. How do we convey that up
Yeah,
in the
sometimes
organization?
you can easily see the strategic value, but strategic value gets eaten for lunch when you have a tactical problem today that could tank your company. That's something I hear a lot. It's like, yes, I know but you're looking at 5-year problems, and I'm sorry, I've got someone on the phone right now. I
Yes.
don't have time for that. And
I have an
I
open
get
Jira
that.
ticket. I don't have time to do the
Yeah,
academic what ifs. That would be nice.
I get that. It's a really, really challenging thing. The only thing you can do is like just keep up with it. If you find an interesting article that just comes across your LinkedIn feed, forward it on to other people saying, hey, I saw this thing, thought about it. What do you think? Hey, I saw that this company reported X amount of savings. What do you think? And sort of just keep an eye out for stuff and share it with the question, what do you think? And see what comes back. You might learn a lot more about your own internal problems. You might hear people who say, well, I don't see how that's relevant. That's perfectly fine. You can have a great conversation with, I don't see how that's relevant. Really? I want to actually know more about that because I read that and here's what I thought. Where are we talking past each other? Because this could be a really interesting conversation. And suddenly you're learning more about their perspective on what's important to them, what's their triggers, and they're now going to learn from you and know that they will be heard at the same time. It's a really great tactic.
That was an awesome conversational judo move. I hope everyone kind of paid attention to that right there. That's a great way to take that energy and go this way with it. And Okay, that's awesome.
I have a black
Well,
belt in Aikido. That was a thing. Yes.
do you really? That was accidental. Okay. Yes. Well, nevertheless, that's awesome. Okay. So now you absolutely, not only are you a hero, identity hero to many of it, you also have the Aikido background to back that up. Well, okay. Mentorship. Let's, I don't want to, I know you've had a long time and I want to be conscious of time here. I just have a couple more questions if that's okay. Mentorship, that is a place that I think a lot of us learn from. I often do these interviews with Jared Gable, who I've learned a ton from and looked up to. But I also kind of have golden retriever energy, and I'll just go talk to anyone. I'll just ask them to talk to me about things, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But not everyone has that blind optimism that I do. How do we find mentors, or how do you seek out a mentor? Who do you look up to as a mentor?
I have a list. Oh my gosh, I have such a list. These are people that I just have the utmost respect for and will be more than happy to what was it? 4 days ago, I was sitting in a bar in the Mission District in San Francisco with Alan Foster talking about the next 15 years of global politics, economics, and standards development and technology. It was great. As soon as more people came, I pulled out my iPad and frantically took notes as to what we had just talked about, because it was just such an interesting conversation, right? Pamela Dingle, she's another person that I will just be ecstatic to sit and ask, back and forth, all the questions. Andy Hindle, he's got such a great view on governance. Um, I don't think people know nearly enough about. They know Andy, then they say, Andy, Identiverse. I'm like, well, yeah, but talk to him about actual corporate governance. And you're going to hear some really interesting conversations, some really interesting perspectives. Eve Mailer, I mean, she's like who I want to be when I grow up. Her Venn Factory Substack is like, I feel like such a poser when I'm writing my blog post, because then I look at what she's written. I'm like, actually, she said what I kind of wanted to. She's really good. She is an analyst, and she is amazing. I'm an explainer, not an analyst per se. So it's different roles. We fill different gaps, but yeah, I love her stuff.
Is there anything that, okay, so I would have said, in other interviews, I probably would have expected somebody to say, where do you go to learn more about changing, just everything about the industry? What are some of your daily reads? And I feel like a lot of us, I'd be like, oh, I think the IDPro Slack community is an amazing one to go and have an ear to the ground for. Are there other resources that you use to stay on top of what's changing that you might recommend to our audience? Not everyone has travel budget, right? Events and conferences are awesome, but not everyone gets to go.
It's actually very hard for me to answer, because starting out, really, it's just gird your loins and reach out to someone and just see if they've got 30 minutes to chat. I have had people say, hey, I want you to be a mentor for me and meet every week. And I'm like, I actually can't do that, because I know what it takes to be a mentor, and I don't have the bandwidth to dedicate an hour every week to this kind of thing. But if you wanted like a half hour with me just to chat about something, I'd be more than happy to do it and get, a piece of me, a piece of Eve, a piece of Andy, right? And just reach out and say, hey, see what any of these people have been writing about, and read through that, so that when you have a conversation, it's not just a, hey, you're really cool, how do I be you when I grow up? Because I don't know how to answer that question.
No, I got you. I got you. And I think on LinkedIn, like the follow option versus connect is the one. Like there was a place where everyone's like going out and just, when it was just connect. And like someone who's high profile is like, just too much noise. I'm not going to do that. But this gives you a way to, in a positive, supportive way, non-creeper way, follow
Mm-hmm.
and do the posts. And it feels
Yeah.
like a really good
That's
resource as
something I
well.
had to change. I had to switch it from, people can connect with me if they want to no, you actually have to know my email address, because I was getting so much review my product, and, for a small fee, you too can be certified, and, all these things. And I'm like,
Yeah.
so that would get a little frustrating. So anyone can follow
Anything
me.
AI specific or agentic
Oh,
specific
sometimes.
resources?
Yeah,
Okay,
people would come to me and say,
LinkedIn.
hey, I've got a brand new thing, or I can make your marketing better via AI, or I can talk
Okay.
about cybersecurity via AI, or I can, I'm like, I don't think you actually read my stuff, do you? I like AI. I use AI, but I'm not going to wholesale buy into it because it's got issues.
That's a whole other episode for us to discuss. So we'll do it a whole other time. And but this has been awesome. This has been really great. I appreciate you coming and chatting. I mean, I think everyone gets the benefit of you facilitating others' messages, and I hope I did an okay job of facilitating some of your background and where we are. And thanks for spending the time with us today.
Of course, it was super fun. Thanks for having me, Mark.
That was so cool. Well, anyone, I mean, you've got the long list of your peers are all the industry stalwarts. Like these are the people that we know. Is there anyone that we should consider for identity heroes that maybe isn't the marquee name that we typically think of, that maybe is someone unique that we should have on to hear their background?
Emily Vanderlande is, she lives, I want to say she lives in Belgium. And I think she's like 26, 27. She's young for the industry. And yet, one of the hats I wear is something called the Identity Salon, where we invite architects and thought leaders in small curated groups under Chatham House rule to talk about 5-10 year problems. And we've invited Emily into this group of like all these senior level people because how she has approached AI and the philosophies of it and the impacts on the world. She's really a great person to talk to, and she'll be a different demographic than you usually get.
Sold. Yeah, hopefully you can make an intro for us.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Love it.
I'm
Love
actually
it.
going to see her
Well,
next week in London.
oh, perfect. Well, if you wouldn't mind, we'd love to grab her on the show as well. So, Heather, thanks so much for spending time, sharing your story. Everyone who's on IDPro, if you haven't done your intro, go do your intros, right? Because that's how we learn about each other a little bit too. Make sure you contribute on the Slack community. But any parting words, Heather, other than thanks for joining us?
No, I mean, thanks for having me, and I hope folks got something out of this. And if you had any other questions, reach me on LinkedIn.
You're great. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And we hope to see everyone else on our next episode. Take care.